Welcome to It's My Turn podcast. And today I have my fabulous honey on here. I call him Wrangler, but his name is Darren. And we are so glad that you're listening today because we want to talk about our story. We're going to talk about how we met and how we got sober. And then we're going to give you some direction if you want help getting sober.
I'm looking forward to it. It's an honor to be here. And if you want to hear a good story that you can retell the others, I promise you're going to get one.
we have a pretty funny story and it is amazing.
It started. You want me to start? Or you
Go
want?
ahead, honey.
So I'm flirting with danger right now, but it started the first Sunday after New Year's Eve in 2016. I am sitting at my favorite bar, which I'll give a shout out, the Frisco Bar in Frisco, Texas. On a Sunday, I was a regular there. I was probably there 5 to 6 to 7 days a week. The reason why I was there on a Sunday afternoon was, quite frankly, my car got drunk, so I had to take an Uber home. And, so I took an Uber back to the bar to pick up my car. And like most of my trips to return to the bar to pick up my car, I decided to stay at the bar. So my car had stayed in the bar parking lot for days, so sometimes maybe in a week or two, but who's counting? But on this particular Sunday, which is normally consist of myself and a lot of the regulars that came in on Sunday, I decided to stay there, obviously. And I look behind me and I see this blonde haired girl sitting at a table. Well, first of all, that was highly unusual for a Sunday afternoon at the Frisco Bar at this particular time. So I think it was about noon. So she happened to be with another friend of mine who that I knew quite well. And I said to my friend, I said, "Who is that girl sitting over there?" And she says, blah, blah, blah. She goes, "But I'm saving you for my sister." Well, her son says, "You don't want her sister." So that's what led to me getting introduced to Tasha. Needless to say, we had many, many drinks, getting to know each other. It only took me about 3 hours to remember her first name. And then, so we're going to keep this PG, but real. Just checking. So
we're going to tell the truth. Yes.
Yeah. So anyway, long story short, we both get rather happy drinking, drunk, and we end up going home together. Yes, the one night stand. And I didn't plan on going to the Frisco Bar on a Sunday and going on a one night stand. So anyway, we wake up the next morning and got to figure out how to get back to our cars. And so anyway, I asked Tasha, I was like, "By the way, what's your last name?" Ooh.
3 hours later.
Well, I figured out her last name about 3 weeks later, but that's a story in itself.
Yes, that's another podcast.
Yeah, that's another podcast. So anyway, I call an Uber, comes picks us up. We're going back to get not only my car but her vehicle as well. We get to the parking lot, and she is driving one of those great big extended expeditions.
Mm-hmm.
Expeditions. You could pack half my house in it. And at the time, she had pretty much all of her house packed into it. And I was like, "What?" I didn't get into it, but I was like, "Where are you? Are you living in this?" And she's like, "No, I'm just staying in a lot of different places." For whatever reason, I pulled in, reached in my pants, pulled out my keys, peeled off the key to my apartment. I said, "Here, if you need someplace to stay, just, you know where I live." And
Let me pause right there. This is a good pause place. I really was. I was going from one house to another because I had left an abusive relationship and I didn't want to skip past that part because I have a huge passion for helping women come out of a terrible situation like that. and I didn't want my ex-husband to find me. Was part of the reason why I had so much things in my car and was kind of going from house to house because I didn't want to stay anywhere too long. It was a terrible feeling, always looking over my shoulder and always wondering, was he going to find me? Was he following me? Was he watching me? Um, so I also needed somewhere to use the Wi-Fi because re I was
Trying to
taking classes to get my insurance license renewed or something. And so I was like, cool, somewhere that nobody can find me.
and,
Okay, go ahead.
well, and I had the cleanest apartment in the world too,
Yes, that was so great.
which I guess at the time was highly unusual for her. But so anyway, needless to say, that later that night, I got a new roommate. Oh my, and you know, from there it went
Well,
a
I
hundred different
also,
ways.
yeah, I also had brought my daughter with me that day. I was meeting a lawyer because I had
Mhm.
been in the middle of a divorce, and the mutual friend that we had was a lawyer, and I had my daughter with me, and she ended up leaving, and Darren likes to tease that we started out with a one night stand, but boy did I show him because we've been together now 6.5 or 5. Well, we've known each other 8.5 probably,
Yeah, it's probably about
and we've
right.
been married for 5.5, and it's been really amazing. So we met in the middle of our mess, literally,
Big mess.
and
Obviously, you know, you've heard Tasha's story quite a bit, and I just kind of told you what I found. Well, my side was not any better. Told you how I was basically living at my favorite bar, and and it was real. I would leave my car there for days, if not weeks, in some instances. Hated my job. My mother was battling cancer at the time, and she's kind of getting to her final stage. So I was dealing with nothing but depression, anxiety, stress, you name it. Stuff I still battle to this day, but not near the way. And my escape was alcohol, and I was an alcohol in my life. My father was an alcoholic, and he wasn't physically abusive, but he was very verbally abusive, which sometimes that's can be worse than physical. Some of you might know. But, we were both, to sum it up, very hot messes. Um, at that time, obviously she wasn't looking for a relationship. I had no idea what I was looking for. I was hating life, that was for sure. And I think, um, in a weird way, we were put together by God. Matter of fact, we have a little saying about our mothers who are now both passed away, but we think our mothers met up in heaven and said, "What are we going to do with these two down there?" And we got slapped together. It's kind of a running joke, but believe it or not, I actually have some belief that may have really happened because it was just ironic how we found each other and how we went, a very long time continuing drinking, doing this, doing all the wrong things that you can think of, and we'll get into some of them.
well,
Mhm.
part of what happened next was, I was in such a mess because I had 7 kids for 7 years, and we had lost a child, and I'm in the throes of this divorce, and I ended up kind of running away from Darren because I needed to get sober, and I saw, kind of where he was with his drinking at the time, and it scared me. So there was a time that we were not together. But
Well, I
then
remember you quit drinking, and I said, "Okay, she's going to quit drinking." Well, I had no intention of quitting drinking, so
right,
I
that was
kept
that was
drinking.
not on the radar for
Yeah,
him at all. So
and it was working fine for me because I'd go to the bar knowing that I was going to come home to my beautiful Tasha sober. Well, that was
that
obviously
there
that was very
there's
selfish of me.
well, there was several podcasts and a lot of stories with the lost cars and the trips to the bars, and sometimes both of us and sometimes just Darren. There's a whole lot of stories there. We'll have to tell more later, but I think it's important to talk about how some time went by
Yeah.
And then because we both ended up with lawsuits that were directly related with the abusive ex-husband, I had my father reach out to Darren through an email. Because again, there was a season where I didn't want people to know where I was. I was afraid he was watching my email, my phone, my everything. I was terrified. I just didn't want to skip over that. And so we come back in touch with each other sometime later. I don't remember exactly what time, we were apart, but
When it
enough to
wasn't
kind
too
of pull
long.
ourselves a
Yeah.
little bit back together. You were in a much different place there. You had started your
Yeah.
business. Your
S-
mom had passed
yeah.
away,
So when you ran away from me,
and
um, and rightfully so, she probably should have, but when she ran away, I decided not to quit drinking, but I decided because I hated my job so bad, and uh, my mother passed away during
yes,
that
you
time.
lost your mom.
And I was like, I decided I'm going to do something for myself. So I started my own company, um, and that started off really, really well. But it also made me much happier. Uh, I mean, much, much happier. Didn't kill it money wise or anything like that, but it it relieved a lot of stress. My mother was in a much better place. That relieved a lot of stress. However, I continued drinking and never slowed down one bit during all that. Um, may have gone to the bar a few days less, but uh,
I think you were drinking a little bit less when I came back in touch with you, and different seasons and things can really spin us out in our drinking.
mhm,
Stress, anxiety. There's always something underlying. I was talking about this the other day. Like, you can't just expect a treatment center to fix you and that be the one single answer. You can't, it's not always only AA, only Celebrate Recovery, only a counselor, or only any of these things, because when we start to get into the recovery, and I'm kind of jumping ahead here for just a second, we have to figure out what are all those things that were causing us to drink. And you were drinking for a really long time. Like, you
mhm.
you started, what age did you start drinking? And you're
Um, Probably when I was 16. Um, I had a few beers like when I was 14, 15, but that was just kind of like what high school kids did, bored high school kids in Iowa did. Um, but 16, after I started driving, become, the typical Friday football games or basketball games during the winter, uh, you know, go out after the games and party, by drinking beer. And, my stepfather was actually a beer distributor. So um, that didn't help.
Yeah. He was
that,
the
didn't-
popular kid in
yeah.
school, right?
But, my family was, I grew up in neighborhood bars. So, meaning that my family went there. Everybody that I knew in the small town, well, it's not a small town, it's Council Bluffs, Iowa, which is about 65,000 people. And it's right next to Omaha, Nebraska. So, it's basically a suburb of Omaha. But on the Council Bluffs side, everybody knew everybody. And so, it was nothing to go play a little league baseball game and then tag along with dad to the neighborhood bar. And, I'd play pinball, watch him drink, stuff like that. But since we did grow up in neighborhood bars, that was kind of our way of, that was our social events, social highlights. So I was kind of weaned in a bar, if you will. Um, and, I'm like the typical college story, played baseball, but we partied like college kids. And, and I didn't really ever even think about stop drinking until I was probably, well, actually, I really didn't think about stop drinking until really up until we met and quite some time after that. Um, what I found out is I can handle alcohol for a long, long time. I used to be a Friday, Saturday drinker. And then, it became Thursday, Friday, Saturday. And then it became Wednesday, Thursday, Friday, Saturday, and then Sundays. Matter of fact, Sundays were my favorite. And then, then it was basically Mondays I was actually pretty good at, except during the football season, except during the football season of Monday Night Football. And Wednesday at the bar, they had karaoke night. I wasn't a big fan of that. So I usually stayed away from that bar and karaoke night. Not saying I didn't go to another bar, but, and I was never, it was kind of weird. I was never an at home drinker. Um, I only like to drink at the bars. I come home and I drink Pepsis or whatever. And I think that's because, and we've talked about this, because my uh, father was a terrible drinker. And when they drank at home, it always ended up in a fight between mom and dad, and it was ugly. And for some reason, I believe that in the back of my mind, I did not want to be him and fight at home. And I just, it's like, and I did my damage at the bar good enough where I'd come home and basically just pass out anyway. So,
So there's such different levels of alcoholism,
mhm.
and that's a good time to talk about that, Darren, because you were kind of more of a uh,
I always say one was too many and 99 is not enough.
you were more of a binge drinker is
Yes.
the word that I was looking for. And so for me, I drank more at home. I didn't go out to the bars. I tried really hard to not drink and drive, and he didn't either. He was a big Uber person, so
Although
that
prior to Uber, I flirted with danger and knock on wood, I think God was looking after me. And I never did get pulled over or, God forbid, get someone else hurt.
right.
Uh,
And I was very lucky to not ever have any DUIs. I've been arrested. I had or public intoxication, private
I had
intoxication.
one of those.
I had a PI. I had one or two, and then um,
And by the way, that just means we were just flat out lucky. I don't care. I don't
yes,
care
we
with
are
everybody.
very
Yeah.
lucky. I have to admit, driving and drinking with my kids in the car, terrible,
Yeah.
terrible. And it alcohol specifically can get such a grip on you that you don't even realize what you're doing.
Oh, yeah.
And as you get sober, later you'll have little flashes of moments and think of things you did. That's what happened to me. It's like, wow, I forgot I did this, I forgot I did that, because you're so wrapped up in the
Oh, yeah. Well,
mess.
like when I was going from the weekend thing to basically an everyday thing, it got to be kind of a running joke. However, I was serious where when I go pick up my car from the bar, I'd walk in and I'd say, first thing I'd say to the bartenders who I knew very well, and they were actually good people, I was like, all right, how much money do I owe and who did I piss off and who do I need to apologize to? It makes it sound funny, but I was actually kind of being serious. And I'm like, I look at whoever the bartender was and say, did I do anything seriously stupid last night? And I was, most of the time I was afraid to hear the answer. So, you know,
So I'm going to jump forward a little bit because we actually moved into this house that we're in about almost 7 years ago.
yeah.
And I had been trying to get sober because I had almost died of pancreatitis. I was in the hospital for a week at Parkland. And I was like sober 100 days and then sober like 75 days. And, so I'd have long stints of being sober. But Darren kept going to the bar and I thought I was missing out. And, here we were living in this house. And if we were going to have a,
You
re-
weren't missing out, I
if
promise.
we were going to have a relationship, then we were going to have to figure out how to have a relationship and not me running around spending his money on his credit cards and him being at the bar, which is kind of what we were doing, which was kind of cool for me, but kind of lonely also.
Like when she called me up from the gas station, she was inserted her credit card to get gas, and they usually ask you for your zip code. Well, she typed in probably 20 different zip codes and finally had to call me up and said, "What is my zip code?" I thought that was funny.
And I was mad and aggravated because,
I want to go back to your dad's email for a second.
okay.
So I get this after we split up. I get this random email from her father, great guy, basically saying, her ex beat her up again, blah blah blah. And I was like, do I even want to respond to this? I was like, and I think it took me all of 5 seconds to get out of the chair and go find her because I
And
knew it was going to happen again. And
and he had followed me at one point to Darren's place,
yeah,
and apparently my dad was really worried about that. Um, and he did.
yeah,
And he figured out where I was, and boy, that's a whole nother podcast
yeah.
too.
That's
But
definitely a whole nother podcast. But
when we were living here, we moved in October the 31st, and well, I think our lease started November the 1st, but that week, this is how God started working in our lives, you guys. That very week, I got a letter from Frisco ISD wanting the proof of Josh where he was living
going to high school,
to keep him in the same school. And so, I was just sitting in Darren's apartment one day, and he said, "You find me a house with a pool in the neighborhood where Josh needs to stay to go to school, and I'll get it, and we'll live there." And I was just, I remember going upstairs because his bedroom was upstairs, and walking into the closet where I had brought a bunch of my clothes and shoes because I was trying to find places to put things, and just praying, God, please, I had always used my address for my kids to go to school, and he that was a huge moment. And again, there was many times that things like this happened where God was able to use Darren and Darren's heart. And you're so generous and such a giver, and you just did so much for me and our kids, really changing the trajectory of their futures.
well, thank you, honey. That was really nice. Now I will. I got to add in some of the good stuff. So when I told her, I said, "You know what? You find me a house that has a pool and a hot tub in that neighborhood, and for lease. I didn't want to buy it." And she was mad. She was irate. There's nothing like that in that neighborhood. There's blah 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 blah
I
blah.
thought the pool was going to be a
And
an obstacle.
so I happened to call some real estate person that I know, and the very next day, there was one available.
First
We
on the list.
first on the list. We came here, and this is it, by the way. We came here, and I signed the lease.
And we literally walked through one walkthrough, and we just were like, it's good enough.
It's perfect.
And there was some work that had to be done. We had to get a
Uh,
new dishwasher, we had to get a new faucet, and you did a lot of work in the backyard. It was kind of, the people that had lived here before didn't really take good care of it.
which it wasn't really that terrible, but
But it was built in 2015,
I
so it
think
was
what
pretty
surprised
new.
her more than anything is I knew how to fix stuff.
That was huge blessing.
Not everything, but I had a home prior to living in an
A
apartment.
couple of them.
Yeah, yeah, a couple of them, and this is our second marriage, so Tasha will tell you it's her third, but I call it her second because the one in the middle was,
It was a nightmare.
yeah, it was not worth talking about. Um,
Honestly, yes. So we lived here, and I started drinking again, and I got Darren to drink with me. I started it
all right,
because I wanted to drink with him, and I wanted to get to know him. I wanted to have a good time. I wanted to have fun. I wanted to have a good time out in the pool. And boy, did we! We woke up
well, we got a lot
with
of stories there.
solo cups all over the backyard and swimsuits, and we did have a good time, didn't we, Donnie?
We sat in the hot tub, I think, for like 5 days once. And as a matter of fact,
Tried to get
the youngest daughter,
Olivia.
Olivia, who found me,
Yes.
just turned 21, and so we called her up to stop at the liquor store to
Bring more vodka.
bring more vodka, which
Terrible.
they were not. She was not very happy about that, and the kids were not very happy about that whole thing. But we went down that path probably for
Just really a couple of months. It was
yeah,
really just
yeah,
like Thanksgiving and Christmas. And then we started to fight.
yeah,
And I remember the
about
moment.
nothing, of course,
Say that again?
about nothing.
Yeah.
Drunk
Just
fights.
drinking causes fighting.
Yeah,
100%. But I remember specifically one night that we had been drinking a lot. It was on the weekend. And Darren said he was having chest pains.
hmm
And he He always calls me Babydoll. We have to tell that story because this is where the name Babydoll comes from, and we'll tell that in a second. But he walked into the bedroom holding his chest and said, "I need to stop drinking. My heart is racing,
I, you know,
chest
I,
pains."
I don't. I think about that situation every once in a while, and I didn't know if I was having a panic attack, an anxiety attack, or whatever because um, it, it, it got to me where now that she was involved in my life and we were living together, I knew I did not want to have a relationship that was similar to my father and my mother's when I was very young. I did not want to start going to the bars on Fridays, Saturdays, or actually every night, and then coming home and having a big fight over nothing.
Yeah.
And I remember waking up on mornings, uh, coming off, hungover, getting into a sober place, and I start stressing out because I knew we were going to drink and I knew we were going to have a bad fight. And that just started stressing me out to the nth degree.
Yeah.
And
In fact, when we were in your apartment the first
mhm.
round, we didn't really have any fights that I remembered.
Well, we didn't really drink in the apartment.
Not really together.
Yeah.
Not, I mean, maybe a few times, but not much because I was really trying to cut back.
Mm-hmm.
But here, it just kind of went from 0 to 100 with
100.
our drinking and
Yeah.
fighting. I mean, it's just like overnight,
Yeah.
and it was ugly.
So,
In fact, there was a couple of days we had like a 3-day bender, and my kids couldn't get a hold of me. Was it 2 or 3 days? And my kids couldn't get a hold of me, and they were worried, rightly so, very worried. And Josh came over and said, "Why is she drinking?" Remember that?
mhm. And actually, I got to think about that. Yeah, I remember that. Well, and I remember one time I thought it was a
Because Darren
Monday.
didn't want to drink with me because I had almost died of pancreatitis. It's crazy how alcoholism can get a hold of you like that. And you can literally almost die, be in Parkland Hospital for an entire week, not knowing if you're going to live or die, and then come back out and drink again.
Yeah, but
It's crazy.
and shortly after that, I think you decided that you're going to quit drinking.
Yeah, I had gone back to AA.
You gone back to AA, and then we weren't married yet either, so we weren't even engaged, or even really thinking about
Yeah,
it.
we didn't know what we were doing.
Yeah, we're just living together, and I was kind of being the nice guy, taking care of the baby doll and the kids. Well, that's something that I'll
No,
tell you.
that's true.
Well, and the kids, but so I'm going to back up a little bit. So when I met Tasha on the one night stand, and I saw and took her back to her car. Well, it was probably 2, 3 weeks later that I met her daughter Olivia, first. And what a wonderful kid. I'm thinking to myself, what a wonderful kid. Then I meet her son. What a wonderful kid. Proper everything. Just great kids. And I already met her first daughter, the oldest, Elizabeth. But I didn't really know her because she was going to Texas Tech at the time. But I got to meet Elizabeth, and same story. And what a wonderful kids. So I'm sitting there looking at Tasha saying, whatever you think you are right there is not. I realized that she was a wonderful mother. And quite frankly, that's why I fell in love with her, because I saw that she was a wonderful mother. Yes, the beauty and everything didn't hurt for sure, but that's the real reason. We kind of jump back to where we are now in the house at the time when she decided to quit drinking and go to the AA route. I start we'd say things like, "There's no way we'd get married and still be drinking," you know.
Yeah.
She started off saying stuff like that, and I was like, "Well, yeah, you're right." And I go through those stress things. Oh, we're gonna drink and whatever. The whole time I'm thinking, um, if the drinking doesn't stop, I got to get out of here or figure out, something for her, something else for her and the kids. So we're having that thing while we're continuing drinking. So anyway, she says to me one day, "You asked me to go to an AA meeting. Remember that?
No,
You
I
don't
don't
remember?"
remember asking you that. I remember you having the chest pains and saying,
Oh,
"I
but
need your
yeah,
help."
yeah.
And you saying, and this is in the middle of the night, we both have been drinking. So I'm thinking, yeah, right.
Hmm.
Darren was a fixture at that bar for how many years? And if I was going to have a bet, I would have bet against that he would ever get sober or even try. And
Hmm.
we can get so mean with alcohol. Even even if you're only drinking at night, you're so mean in between. You're
Yeah.
just under the influence of this monster of alcohol, and you're not clear-minded ever. You're mean.
No.
I am mean. We were mean to each other. But he said, "I need your help. I need to stop drinking." And I was like, "Yeah, whatever." And he said, "No, I'm serious." And I said, "Okay, well, I go 7 a.m. the Frisco group behind Stonebriar Community Church. That's where I was going to AA meetings since 2013, off and on. I was a
Hmm.
relapser." And I said, "Okay, well, Monday morning, 7 a.m." And I thought, because this was like a Saturday night. So I thought, yeah, whatever. I didn't expect that he would actually go. And I was shocked. He got up. He wanted me to wake him up on time, go to the meeting. And we went to that meeting, and I was floored. And we walked into that room and we sat down, and everybody started to share and tell him what you said.
Well, I like telling this story because besides saying hi, I'm Darren, I'm an alcoholic. Um, I said the absolute reason why I'm there, why I'm here, is because, uh, and I didn't rehearse this. This just kind of came out, but I said, everything that's ever happened bad to me in my life, in one way, shape, or form, has involved alcohol. And I was like, I'm tired of it. I said, I'm actually tired of it, but I know this. I need your all's help to do it. And I meant it from the bottom of my heart. I talk about it still quite a bit. It's usually the first thing I say to people that want to help quit drinking. And if I could possibly help them, I tell them my story because I think it's important. And I stick by that too. But, uh, we drank again, didn't we?
Well, I was going to stop there and say, that was so important, because if you heard what he just said, it was so honest. It was so honest and so real. And when you get to that point where you're just done, it's messed up enough of your life, it's messed up enough of your family, and now it's beginning to mess up the potential for your future.
Mhm.
It's just too much. And that real surrender in that moment is so important, because when until you get to that place, you really can't start getting sober. So we made it 2 weeks,
Made it two
2 or
weeks.
3 weeks, and then we had to go to Abilene to help
Abilene.
his aunt.
Yeah. So my long story short, my Aunt Judy at the time lived in Abilene, Texas, which is about 3 hours away from us.
You know what, Darren? I'm going to stop you right there. We're going to take a break, and we're going to be right back with you guys. Thanks for joining us today. Thank you for following us, and I hope you'll listen. We're going to have a part 2 and probably a part 3 to finish our story. And follow me on Instagram and TikTok and YouTube and Facebook. And my website is babydollmartin.com. When you go on there, you can click on sober, and it'll put you into my calendar, and you can do a discovery call, and we can see if we're a good fit for each other, and we want to help you get sober and get free.